Holla ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher! Let's talk about the Azerite armor, because something's gone on, right? Something's gone on at Blizz. They've gone from pointing out just a month or so ago, classes are nearly done. We're pretty happy, don't expect much changes. Now we've got a whole host on a daily basis of class changes and stuff, and they've decided to heavily, and I mean heavily, squish Azerite power gains in terms of how much AP you're going to need per level. I think Blizz has maybe noticed an issue that we started to point out about a week or so ago, which is the system's not quite working, is it? Maybe. Have they fucked it up? I don't know, man, because this could lead to, I'm not whining here, I'm saying it could lead to the most alt-friendly expansion of all time. So let's talk about Azerite armor and what the idea behind it is. It is our new progression system. What you have is the ability to go out and go to a dungeon, and there will be Azerite armor in there. It can't Titan Forge. It is what it is, depending on the difficulty of the dungeon you do. So there will be higher item level stuff in more difficult, challenging content, right? Nice enough. And also, the traits that are on that armor are preset. They're not RNG. It's not a Nether Crucible system exactly. It's reversed, but it is set in stone. So you know if you want X trait, that drops in X dungeon, right? Simple enough, nice and easy. Now, this is your new progression system. So the idea behind this, of course, is that the traits are going to be different in different scenarios. Okay? Makes sense. And also, they don't really want you to respec it. They're going to allow it, but they've said it's going to be expensive. They might go back on that now. I wouldn't be surprised. But what they want is for you to go and say, if you do this Azerite armor is really good in open world, right? It's good for great short-term combat. It provides decent personal defensives, things like that. That's going to be great for open world. This other one works really well in dungeons. It provides more bonuses when you're in group settings or with damage over time. It provides better AoE for your character. And I think we need to hit the nail on the head here because some people aren't quite getting it. Although the Azerite traits are mostly boring from what we've seen, and you're right, we haven't seen the raid stuff yet, so I can't comment, but they're mostly passive stuff, like your attack does more damage, okay? That does not mean they're insignificant. Big difference there. In fact, we have seen dramatic DPS differences between people who've had certain Azerite traits and those who haven't. I mean, wild differences here. They may be boring, but they're not insignificant. So don't downplay those. That might change as well. Who knows? So what they're looking at is you might have, say, for a Fury Warrior, you might have an Azerite set that's for open world. You might have an Azerite set is for Mythic Plus. You might have a couple of sets for Mythic Plus, depending on what affixes you get, certainly if you're tryharding. And then you'll have a different set for raiding. Then you'll have a different set potentially for PvP. And the more styles of WoW that you play, because WoW caters to everybody, then the more gear you'll probably have to farm. Now, there's some good and downsides to that. One, you're going to be farming a lot of gear. You're going to be farming a lot of gear. Because take everything I just said and then multiply that by 3. There are 3 slots for Azerite armor. If you want to do this for multiple specs, multiply that by 2, 3, or 4, depending on your class. That's a huge amount of items you're going to be collecting. Now, the good side of that is less likely to run into gear that is just useless to you. Like we have in Legion. How many items drop and you're like, shit, 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 shit. It's like an old kid's trading card game with football stickers or something. It's like crap, 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 good one. Crap, 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 crap. And then you go on for days and it's like a good one. That's the way it works now. And of course, if you're more of a casual player and you're absolutely no intention whatsoever of getting multiple sets to maximize your performance in different areas, you're probably just going to wear the best item level, right? So for those guys, it makes no difference. For the more tryhard you are, the more intense you are, the more you enjoy being as powerful as you can be, the kind of more farming you're going to have to put on top of this. Okay, that's the system. That's what they want you to do for progression. But they tied it to the new Azerite power system. But instead of having an artifact that you could plan a journey on, almost, I mean, most people followed a cookie cutter build, let's not pretend they didn't, but you still were working towards traits and you had incremental progression as you went up. Each level unlocked something new, but it had some problems. It had some problems. One, you had to keep changing spec and then actually applying the Azerite power, the artifact power to the item that you wanted to put it to, then respec back again, balance it out, work towards different levels of traits. And that's a bummer. So they changed it to the Heart of Azeroth. So it's just a singular item that has levels. It's just a necklace. And then any Azerite power you gain will just automatically go into it because it works for every spec. A nice quality of life improvement. Now, the backup to that is that we pointed out last week is that it's a really arbitrary system. And there's no getting away from that. It's incredibly arbitrary. Whatever number Blizzard decides to put on the traits, right, for your gear to unlock the traits. So if they say you need level 10, you need level 12, it's ridiculously arbitrary. And also, as you're probably going to realize, at a certain point, you just don't need any more. For that tier, you're done. And all you're going to be doing then is getting minimal amounts of stats on a necklace by getting artifact power. So the system kind of kills itself extraordinarily quickly. Originally, this system was quite lengthy. It had a massive drop-off, as you saw with the same with your artifact weapon. At around level 10, you started to require huge amounts of Azerite power just to upgrade to the next level. And what that meant is if you weren't seriously farming, although there was a catch-up week on week, you were going to be equipping items because you know, as well as I do, if someone gets a high item level piece of gear, it doesn't matter if it literally does nothing, they're going to equip it, right? You guys know that. I know that. There's no way of getting away from it. If somebody gets a really high item level Azerite piece, but they are 10 levels away from actually turning it on, right? Literally being able to switch it on. They're still going to wear it. They're still going to put that shit on because it helps them get into groups or whatever. This creates a big problem amongst a lot of the player base is you are guaranteed at that point to have a lot of people running around with higher item levels and literally the items are doing nothing, which is way worse than what we have now. Now we have a system where people wear high item level stuff that might be the wrong stats, right? And that's kind of bad. If you look at the simulations of your character, wearing the wrong stats is a pretty big fucking deal. And those guys don't care. So you can imagine that when you can have gear that literally does nothing, just gives you main stat, right? Which is pretty powerful in BFA, no one's going to deny that. But that's all it does, and it doesn't have this very, very powerful attribute in terms of the actual Azerite trait it carries with it. Then you're going to have a big deal. Then you're going to have a problem on your hands because these guys are going to be significantly weaker than somebody who's farmed. And that creates problems for people who like to play multiple characters and people who just generally don't like to farm. And yes, it's an MMO, but a lot of people don't like to farm their ass off arbitrary resource X in order to unlock a level when they've already got the item in the first place. As far as they're concerned, they have it, right? So we pointed this out, is you're going to have a lot of people running around with useless items. And remember, it's 3 slots, right? So they're going to have totally useless items on them. So what they've done now is they've completely squashed the Azerite power gains. So it's far easier to gain a huge amount of levels, right? By a few 100% in some cases. As you get higher up, the difference is far more staggering. Certainly around level 20, you'll notice it dropped from like, I think it was like 200k to 40k. That's a pretty significant drop in the amount of AP you needed in order to get to the next level of your Heart of Azeroth. Now that makes a lot of sense. That means that the more casual players and the guys who don't have time to farm or don't want to farm are still going to be able to gain enough levels in order to actually switch on their gear. Great. At that point, though, as many of you have contacted me, I had several emails on this. It's like, well, what's the point in the system anymore? And that's a really good question. What is the point in this system? And I think that's where Blizzard's got to now. They're like, we kind of screwed this up. Because if we go one way, we're fucked, right? And if we go the other way, like they've gone now, it's like, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Because people are going to gain these levels really quickly, activate their gear, and that's it. That's it for the next tier. So we have this completely arbitrary, basically semi-pointless system in the game, and a lot of our game is currently based around that. Like I pointed out, the world quests dry up real fast before this change in BFA. Now with this change, even AP isn't enough to get you out there, so you cut AP out and you've basically got gold and some pet charms and things like that, and that's all that's really available in BFA now in terms of world quest rewards and some reputation if you're into mount farming or pet farming or whatever it is. Sure, you've got a few more things, but if you're not into mount farming or pet farming, the entire world quest system seems to collapse under its own weight. It's a good question, and I'd love to see your thoughts on it. Like, what is the point in this system anymore? If you're going to make it very easy to get the levels, why have it in the first place, right? I mean, what's the idea behind it? Are you going to keep changing the numbers every time? You're just going to say, well, where are the raiders at now? Because you have to be careful with that. If your catch-up's not good enough, that means that on the next tier of gear, when that comes, you've got a player base that is massively divided in terms of where their Azerite strength is. So are you going to keep introducing gear that's really difficult to activate and then try and speed everybody back up to the same point all the time, in which case the system once again becomes completely pointless? There is no point in having a system that keeps boosting you back up to the appropriate stage every single tier. Or are you going to make the next the next tier of gear really low in Azerite levels, right? So you don't have to keep playing catch up all the time. But then again, what's the point? The question comes up again. Well, what's the point in the system? what's the idea behind it? This looks to be where Blizzard's gone, and I think they've had to make some very quick decisions. We've talked about their running out of time, and it does feel like they're running out of time. We're seeing that a lot in class design, and certainly now, as it looks like they've realized that the Azerite power system isn't going to work. It's not fleshing out as much as it wants. This is what it appears like to me. They've realized they've implemented a system that's just not clicking. It's not there. It's got faults on both ends of the spectrum. There isn't really a nice middle ground where the system makes any sense now, because you're just talking about necklace stats after a certain point. Because of the nature of the system, we've had to put the most powerful bonuses very early on, so even if people don't want to farm, they'll still get the benefit of it, in which case we're then asking people to farm in order to gain 5 item levels, which some people will be really into, but you can imagine, and I'm sure many of you here will feel the same way. It's like, well, that's not very exciting. Even for a defensive, most people won't feel that excited by it, especially if you're in group content. It feels like it's gone wonky. But on the good side, one, far more casual friendly now. Yeah, I mean, if you're playing multiple characters, you're probably going to be able to sort them out relatively quickly. On top of that, it has led to dramatic class changes, because they simply can't do what the Azerite system was intended to do. It was originally said the Azerite armor will plug the holes in the classes. We all remember that. That's what they were going to do. They were going to flesh it out, make the interest, plug the holes with the Azerite armor system. Frankly, 3 traits that can be changed arbitrarily isn't doing that. And now we're starting to see them go back to the classes, where just a month ago, they were saying, look, we've got it. Everything's pretty much done. Now we're seeing big blog posts, lots of changes coming up. We're a few builds ahead. We're doing stuff. They're trying very desperately, it seems to me, to do the classes, because that's what people are going to have regardless, right? They're going to have the classes. We need to make them work. The Azerite system is not plugging the holes. The ship is still leaking. You kind of get that image of the guy with a cracking glass trying to stick his fingers in all the holes, right? And it just keeps popping out somewhere else. It's like, well, if we do this, yeah, but that doesn't work in terms of gameplay. If we do this, well, that's not going to pay off. What if people take this trait and that trait? That doesn't work. It's like, it doesn't add to gameplay in any way. Most of this stuff is just passive stuff. It's not there. It's not plugging these holes. I think it's a really interesting situation. I would love to see some thoughts from Blizzard on this, but I don't think they will. And I've got to ask the question, in the future, are they going to have to change what the Heart of Azeroth does? Are they going to have to add a lot more? Are they going to have to add some sort of progression tree to it? Or we just end up with people, to simplify the system, immediately jumping straight to Concordance from the start of the expansion, and this system is supposed to last us the entire expansion. Are they going to have to do something along those lines in order to try and make this system work? Because there's probably little to no chance of them changing it right now, but they can in a content patch in the future. Or doesn't it matter? Are we quite happy? I don't know. For me, I'm reasonably happy. If I were to play 3 characters throughout BFA, which is what it's looking like for my guild, I'm pretty happy that I don't need to farm a lot of boring world quests for AP or do all that stuff to get them up to snuff. I'm fine with that in many ways. Give me an Apex's system that I can ignore at some point, and I'm happy, right? That's what Apex's never particularly bothered me in WoD, because I didn't need that stuff. And if this system kind of runs itself dry, I'll be sad because it's a lack of content. Sure, like, there's no incentive really to do much of this stuff. But at the same time, I'm not somebody who looks to WoW to play it 12 hours every day. I'm not that guy. I'm a raid logger. That's how I've been for a while. I like to log in. I like to have some fun. I like to log out. I don't want to log in and go, right, what's my world quest sort of routine for the day? How much AP do I need to get? I didn't enjoy that in Legion. So in that respect, I'm kind of happy. I'm kind of happy with this change. So I'd love to see your thoughts on it as well. Thank you so much for listening, you wonderful people. And I'll see you again. Bye-bye.